Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. So, all year long we've heard rumors off and on again that Square Enix is about ready to sell, and that Sony, out of all companies, are interested in an acquisition. This really just continues this trend of publisher buyouts that we've been seeing as of recent, whether that be with Activision Blizzard or with Bethesda. The game industry right now truly is changing. However, we did get an update today directly from Square Enix themselves and translated by a senior analyst, and supposedly they did indicate that this is partially true, though maybe not in the way that you were expecting. This is actually a much stranger approach than just a flat-out acquisition, so we're going to dive into that today and try to figure out exactly what's happening together. Also, Xbox Game Pass is expanding with a brand new plan that's actually a pretty good deal depending on your needs. This could end up being a great thing for consumers and Microsoft alike, just ballooning Xbox Game Pass subscriptions even further. Before we get into all the news though, sorry, but I do have to do that subscriber thing. Make sure to hit that subscribe, like, and bell notification button below. It does greatly help out the channel, and genuinely, I do very much appreciate it. On to our first topic of the day, though. We do have a couple of game events for the month of August, one being Gamescom, of course, but also it looks like we're going to get an update for an upcoming first-party Xbox exclusive. Bethesda does have their yearly QuakeCon event that's coming up on August 18th through the 20th, and it's a little bit more busy than you might expect. They did reveal their schedule, and it shows they're planning to showcase various games, including Ghostwire Tokyo, Fallout 76, Elder Scrolls Online, Quake, of course, and then the really interesting one here is Redfall. Apparently, Redfall does have its own 30-minute segment called, quote-unquote, Bringing Redfall to Life with Arcane Austin. So, from the sounds of this title here, this isn't just going to be a simple trailer and then just move on, but rather it sounds like we're going to get to hear directly from the developers and how this game works, which I actually think is a great idea for a game like this. Now, the reason I say that is because I feel like that there's still this misconception out there that this is a cooperative game first and foremost, whereas the developers themselves have been very adamant that that's not true at all. They've claimed time and time again that Redfall has a rich single-player experience and that it's not required for you to play cooperative to have fun in this game. So maybe at this showcase here, they can kind of explain that a little bit better as to the reason they say that, and can just kind of highlight what makes this game both a good single-player game as well as how it's a good cooperative experience. What I will say about this game, though, is that every time I see it, I really do think that it just looks better and better. And I have complete confidence in Arcane, which has consistently shown that they know how to make good games, whether that be with something like Prey. Of course, last year they released Deathloop, and then there was Dishonored before that. So, yeah, they know how to make great games, and I do expect Redfall to be really good as well when it eventually releases sometime in 2023. Moving on from vampires, though, let's go back and talk about the more traditional zombie games. Now, I know we've gotten a lot of zombie games throughout the years, but I don't know if I can recall a game that's taken on the slogan of being undead quite as literally as Dead Island 2. This game just absolutely refuses to die, and after originally being revealed way back in 2014, 8 long years later, it is reportedly set to get its re-reveal possibly in late 2022. It's honestly almost hard to believe by this point, but this is according to Tom Henderson, which has proven to have a very good track record when it comes to leaks, and according to him and his sources, a re-reveal is coming soon, and that the Game Awards could actually make sense here. I would have to agree with that part, as the Game Awards has a huge viewership, and if they want to get this game back on the map in a big way, that's actually a great way to do so, especially if this game turns out to be good. And that's the thing about this whole situation. Very obviously, there might be some concern with it having such a rough development period on whether or not it will actually turn out to be a decent game or not. But again, according to Tom Henderson's sources, at least one of them has played Dead Island 2, and apparently it's left them very excited about its full release. So if it is actually looking good and they put together a trailer that can highlight that at the Game Awards, you know, with that huge viewership, then we could see a really cool turnaround here for a game that I'm sure a lot of people gave up on a long time ago. Now, apparently, though, it does have a big focus on its cooperative gameplay, which is always a welcome addition, so I'd expect them to show that in some shape or form at its re-reveal. Let me know, though, after all these years of waiting, are you still excited about a Dead Island sequel, or has your interest waned? All right, so let's go talk about what's happening with Square Enix. They did post their quarterly report results today, which was a mixed bag, as we're seeing with a lot of the game industry at the moment. I will post a screenshot of some of those results, but the most interesting thing that came from all of this was them talking about selling. Now, there's been rampant speculation all year long about a Square Enix acquisition where Sony will counter what Microsoft is doing with Activision Blizzard. Now, a lot of that speculation simply just comes from quote-unquote hardcore fans wanting that to happen as opposed to any type of hard evidence, but there have been a few recent findings that does indicate that maybe it could actually happen. There was the fact that Square Enix sold off both Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal earlier this year, which, that could signify them making themselves into a more attractive acquisition target. That does make sense on paper. And then there was also the Eidos Montreal founder, which heard a rumor that Sony was interested in a Square Enix acquisition. So suddenly, the idea of Sony and Square Enix has become a little bit more realistic. Though up to this point, and this is very important, it's still just rumors and speculation and nothing more than that. Well, the thing about all this is that Square Enix did actually talk about selling today at their earnings report, though not necessarily in the way that you would expect. So this was reported by David Gibson, an industry analyst, and according to him, Square Enix detailed a two-phase plan at their earnings call. The first phase was to offload Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal, as we saw earlier this year, to increase capital efficiency. As we've talked about before, both of these studios were very expensive to maintain. And as stated here, Square Enix was apparently concerned with them cannibalizing sales of the rest of their studios. So this kind of explains what really actually happened with those studios being sold off. It wasn't necessarily just because they want to sell off the entirety of Square Enix. Well, we'll get more into that here in just a moment. As for Phase 2, the more intriguing part here, they are looking to primarily focus on Japanese games, as to be expected, and they detailed reviewing their portfolio of owned studios, where they're then going to decide on whether or not to retain full ownership or to allow other companies to buy stake in those individual studios. So that's where things get really, really interesting. Yes, it's very, very different, but this is incredibly interesting. However, what does all of this exactly mean? Well, that is a very good question because, again, this is an entirely different approach than just a flat-out acquisition. And I think that that's the first part that you can kind of rule out here. This does indicate that Square Enix is not necessarily looking to be outright acquired. So the idea of Sony and Square Enix just dramatically dropped here. However, this might actually be even better for Sony. From what's being described here, there does seem to be a possibility that companies like Sony, as an example, could make a long-term investment in individual Square Enix studios. So let's say that Sony is interested in locking down Final Fantasy to PlayStation for more of the long term. Well, from what I understand here, they could invest in a studio working on those games. They could also do the same thing with a studio like Luminous, which is working on Forspoken. Then you have Nintendo, and they have a very good partnership with Square Enix as well, especially the Asano team that makes games like Bravely Default, Live Alive HD, and Octopath Traveler. If that studio has its own stake as well, then maybe Nintendo could invest in them for a long-term partnership and just kind of secure those games on Nintendo going forward. So this could actually be a big win for Sony and Nintendo, depending on if they actually want to make those long-term investments. There's kind of the thing though, because even though Nintendo and Sony have a good relationship with some of these Square Enix studios, that doesn't just absolutely guarantee that they'll automatically get them. There will, without a doubt, be a lot of interest from other high-profile publishers out there like Tencent. We know that they are very active when it comes to acquisitions. You have Nexon or maybe even Microsoft. Now, I'm a little hesitant to say Microsoft just because I really do believe that their hands are tied until the Activision Blizzard acquisition is complete. So I wouldn't expect them to make any immediate moves until all that's complete. As for Square Enix, though, why would they decide to do all this? And the answer to all that just comes down to capital efficiency, as David Gibson explained. In fact, since Square Enix made this announcement today, their stock has actually increased by 9%, so this has been very well received from their stockholders. I guess all in all, though, from a fan's perspective, I would say that this is kind of a good middle ground. On one side, Square Enix won't just flat out be acquired by anybody, and I think that part's good for the entire industry. but it does bring up a lot more questions for individual studios and who can buy these stakes. I think the best case scenario here would be for a third party to make that investment and keep their games multi-platform. But as always, we'll just have to kind of wait and see. With both Nintendo and Sony having good relationships with some of these studios, I could see them being very involved. Let me know what you all think about all of this, though, and do you take any of what we heard today differently than how I did? This is a very unique situation that we haven't really seen before, so we're all just kind of learning together. Now, we do also have some Xbox Game Pass news to talk about today, as they're expanding with a new subscription plan, and that is the much requested family plan that will make it even easier and more affordable for groups of players interested in subscribing to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. They are currently testing out its family plan, though as of this moment, its availability is limited to users located in Colombia and in Ireland. And yes, you will need to be in the correct Xbox Insider ring. So do keep in mind that this is not available for everybody right out of the gate, but this is the first step in ironing out some of its kinks before its full official launch, which is looking to release sooner rather than later, hopefully sometime this year. This is looking to be a very good deal too. It does appear to be $25 a month, where you can invite 4 other people on Xbox within the same country to be a part of your family plan, which will then allow each individual Xbox account to have access to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. Now, Xbox Game Pass Ultimate currently goes for $15 a month, but that's for just one account as opposed to 5 for the family plan, being you and 4 users you invite, which means just $5 a person. Obviously, that money will only come from one credit card, but as long as you trust the other members within your family plan and they all want to pay some money, well then suddenly Xbox Game Pass Ultimate becomes incredibly cheap. I mean, having access to more than 100 games, new day one releases on a monthly basis, day one first party games, and having Xbox Live Gold for just $5 a month is, absolutely truly insane. I mean, Game Pass is already viewed as the best deal in gaming, but here, under the right circumstances, it's about ready to get even cheaper for some fans out there. So this is a great and very welcome option to have for consumers, and the subscriber count from Microsoft could really balloon dramatically for Game Pass if enough people are willing to jump into that family plan. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all, would you be interested in getting a cloud-based only handheld console that takes advantage of Xbox game streaming? Logitech and Tencent, of course, just announced that new console, and they are working very closely with the Xbox game streaming team. So this is happening, so I wanted to see how interested you all actually would be in a device like this. And as you can see here, nope, most of you all are not interested in this, with 57% of you saying no, while 36% of you said yes for the right price. And okay, there it is. And it is about what I expected. A device like this certainly would have a more limited market than your typical handheld console, and your all's various comments describes exactly as to why. Some of you all did mention things like you thinking it was pointless because game streaming is already available on phones, while others are concerned with their internet speed, and then some of you all mentioned things like game streaming is still relatively new and by no stretch of the means absolutely perfect. So investing in a device like this is definitely not going to be necessarily for everybody. It's going to have more of a limited market. But 37% interest here, that is still quite significant. If anything, I think that it does show you that there's a market for a device like this. Like I said yesterday, I know for myself, I would much rather play Xbox Cloud Gaming on a dedicated handheld console because it's more streamlined and less cumbersome. I know I can't speak for everybody per se, but for myself, even if you have a good mobile controller, which I do in a Razer Kishi, but even then, it's still kind of annoying to set up and play on your phone. I have to take off my phone case, then I have to connect my controller, and then on top of that, I get notifications from my phone interrupting my overall game experience. And it's just not an ideal situation. So that's where I think a dedicated handheld console would really come in handy. And I did see some of you all kind of agree with that overall sentiment. At the same time, though, I think for me, I'm still not 100% on board with a cloud-based console. I can certainly see the appeal for a lot of consumers out there, especially if you have good internet connection. But for me, I much prefer to play my games locally. I have played some games on cloud in the past, and I've had a decent overall experience, but again, I still prefer playing my games locally. What I would personally like to see happen is for Microsoft to team up with Valve to get PC Game Pass running on the Steam Deck right out of the gate. And that means working on the Steam OS. Will this actually happen though? I mean, Valve publicly said that they would like to see it happen and they would even help Microsoft out, so the ball is in Microsoft's court. I think the big hurdle here, though, in making this actually happen is that I don't think Microsoft wants to share any of the revenue that PC Game Pass gets with Steam. So with that in mind, it probably won't happen, or at least anytime soon. And I guess you could still just kind of install Windows on the Steam Deck and you can play your PC Game Pass games that way, but that still doesn't work as well as the Steam OS. It's just a big extra step. So, you know, there's some give and take there. But nonetheless, it does seem like a good portion of you all would still be interested in a dedicated handheld cloud-based console, as you can see here. 37% of you all are indeed interested. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.